Presentation is up there if you're interested. I also put on the last slide, so. So if you don't catch up with me, and ours map. And I'm not going to use the microphone, so I'm going to try to open it loud. So. Good, how are you? All right, I'm going to start. So I'm Holly Doe. I was able to meet a couple of you prior to presenting, and I am the Director of Technology for the Pelham School District. And I've been doing that for about 3 years now. It might help shed some light on my presentation to tell you a little bit about the jobs I did before. So before being a Director of Technology, I was a tech integrator in the Pelham School District, and I did that for 3 years. I worked district-wide for a while, and I also worked at our high school. Prior to that, I think it says in the program, enrichment. So I was the enrichment teacher, sort of STEM teacher for the elementary school. I did a lot with Legos and robotics for 3 years. And then prior to that, I was a stay-at-home mom for 8 years. And prior to that, I did teach in the Northampton School District as a computer teacher, and I taught in Maine for a couple of years as a 4th grade teacher. So I sort of had this kind of K through 12 experience that's kind of brought some nice background to being a Director of Technology. I will say when I first started the job as director a couple of years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, the technical, I have some of that, but I've certainly learned a lot about networks and things like that since then that I do also have to have a slight understanding of. So I'm going to be talking about a little bit about what we've done in Pelham with professional learning and give you some, I'm hoping to give you like all kinds of smattering of ideas so that you might find 1 or 2 things that you can take back and try. A lot of these are not original to us. I found great ideas in other places. We adopted them, we changed them up a little bit. And I put a puzzle there because my family right now, we've got this fascination with puzzles. It started the last week, the weekend that was it Labor Day weekend at the end of the summer. We tried to get away for 3 days because I don't really get much summer vacation with technology. And so we went to this Vermont house, and I tried to put all my tech away, and my daughter got out this puzzle, and we started putting it together, and we had 2 days to complete a 1,000-piece puzzle, and the whole family was like around putting this together. So as I was driving up this morning, I was thinking about, we've done about 5 or 6 puzzles since, and our dining room table is just converted into this puzzle-making place, and we glue them together, and she's got a plan for where she's going to put them up around the house. But I was thinking about this because, you always start with like the border and putting that border together. This is our first puzzle we did in Vermont. It actually had 2 missing pieces. We were really angry by the time we finished it because we'd spent so much time, but it was missing some in the box. But you start with that border, and that's how she started that day. None of us were helping her. She was just working on that border. And really, we started in Pelham, we had sort of a frame for professional learning. We had a plan. And what we've been doing is just sort of filling that in with all kinds of different choices and things that work for our staff. So hopefully I can share with you a bunch of those things. The other piece to this, which is a theme for this conference, is future ready. And we are a future ready school district. We use this framework to do our technology plan. So I know a lot of districts over the years have had to put together technology plans. And when this came out a couple of years ago, we said, rather than do a tech plan the way we've been doing it, really focused on infrastructure and budget and things like that, let's focus on using this framework to make sure that our plan is balanced. We knew we wanted to go one-to-one. And so this really helped us put all those pieces into place. So as you're looking at, if you're here tomorrow or the next day, all of the sessions here have a gear that's associated with those sessions. And so for my session, it's directly, personalized professional learning, the blue gear. But at the center of all of this is personalized learning. So we have a 3-year plan, and we're actually in year 3 of that, and we'll be looking at that this year and kind of revising, and hopefully by the end of this year we'll have another 3-year plan. This is our, a little hard to read, but this is our vision for personalized learning in our district. We're committed to providing coordinated, quality, and diverse personalized professional learning based on diverse sources of data that support 21st century skills. You can read it, but basically that diverse piece, I think, is what I'll be showing you. And then we have 2 goals centered around this in our actual Future Ready plan. To create a research-based professional development plan to transform instructional approaches. And action 1 is about SAMR. I don't know how many of you have heard of SAMR. Yeah. So if you haven't heard of SAMR, it's a model for tech integration. I believe the SAMR stands for substitution, augmentation, modification, and redefinition. So that SAMR model at the time was something we were really looking at, and we started off the first year going back to school and having our tech integrators focus on that model and showing teachers just the levels that you could do with technology, and redefinition is kind of that level where that task that kids are performing couldn't be performed before without that use of technology, almost like maybe a mystery Skype where you're connecting with other classrooms around the world or something like that, whereas substitution is more like, okay, I can use a word processor to type my report, but what's really transformative about that? So that was one of our pieces, and then the other was just to provide those targeted immersive learning opportunities for our one-to-one environment. And goal 2 was a little bit bigger, I guess, and more actions. But we talked about looking at barriers. I think this is a really hard one, and it's probably going to be in our next plan. Because looking at the schedule and looking for that flexibility to give staff PD when they need it is really hard. And if we keep on, staying with constraints of that typical school schedule, I think we've got to start looking at that and how that works, and how it can work for us. Action 2 is that time for people during the school day, and I do have some strategies for that. We were going to survey teachers, and then action 4 is huge. And if I could advocate one thing for every school district, it's to have instructional coaches or tech integrators in every building. That's the really, I think, ultimately transformative piece that can help. And I'll talk about, we've got 3 fabulous tech integrators, instructional coaches in our district that are working daily with staff. But we built it into our plan. It wasn't just here, but in our budget section of our Future Ready plan, we said we are budgeting to eventually not just have 1 tech integrator, but to have 3 across the district, 1 in each school. And we're a small district, or relatively small, I think, 2,000 students. So each school is about 600 or 700, and we have 1 dedicated person for every school. I think it's pretty awesome. So creating a professional learning network, we did try some stuff with Google Plus and communities. Didn't really take off. The thing that's taken off for us in our district is Twitter. More so to put out great stuff, but some teachers are starting to share enough that I think other teachers are starting to see that really good stuff going on in other classrooms. We've been using a tool for a couple years, 2 years now, called Bright Bites. I don't know if anybody's heard of it. It is a great tool. We're actually not using it this year, but we have used it. We got some really good data and some trending stuff over 2 years. What Bright Bites does is it breaks out, you assess your teachers, you assess your students, and you can assess your parents as well in the community. And it will break it out by what's going on in the classroom, the access that students and teachers have at home and at school, the skills across foundational, online, and multimedia in the environment. And those beliefs are huge in the environment too, making sure, if people don't have those beliefs around the use of technology and how it can transform learning. That's a huge one. But for us, that skills column was where we sort of looked and we dug into each school's data and we looked for what those needs were in each school. And I guess classroom can, I think across the board, Bright Bites was telling us, can be traditionally a little bit lower. You see our teachers were in that pink area, that 4 C's. So that critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication were our weaknesses. More weak in one particular school than the others. And these are just some of the graphs and some of the data that we got from Bright Bites. This particular one is how much time they spent in non-school sponsored PD. So that was interesting to see and kind of evaluate, well, you know, are teachers getting out there and seeing other things? You know, are they spending too much time in district doing school-sponsored PD? What are they choosing to go to? The other thing we looked at is, I thought this was an interesting one. To research a topic, teachers ask a friend or colleague. And that's important. Every graph in there also talks about why that matters. And so it matters because according to a study, students who have teachers who foster strong collaborative relationships have better performance in their classrooms because they're collaborating and working together. We also got feedback from the Bright Bites surveys on exactly what they wanted their PD around in the district. So 51% prefer online tools for critical thinking. So that was really, you know, exciting because we were weak in critical thinking. So 46% multimedia, 41% online collaboration, and so it kind of broke it down. And we tried to kind of gear our professional learning around those topics. And I just threw this one in there just to show that we could really get down to specific skills with this survey. Teacher reported ease of reporting and editing. So that's a foundational type skill, maybe not for all, but we wanted to know, you know, like clearly that one, 24%, that's moderately difficult. It's really spread. So we had feedback on all of these different skills and how teachers thought they were doing. I will say, on that one, a lot of our teachers now say, you know, I really don't need to know that. I don't know if your teachers do this, but my kids can show me and they can teach me, and our teachers are reaching out more to their students in the classroom and saying, you know what, I trust you, go figure that out and then share it with me, share it with other kids. So I kind of think some of these things are becoming a little less important to be that granular. Tom Murray's the keynote tomorrow morning, and we did a book meet on our tech committee, and we went through his book. He has a chapter totally devoted to personalized professional learning, and I wanted to share with you a little bit of one study that he talks about. So Linda Darlingham, the School Redesign Network, they did a study, and these were their takeaways at the end of the study, that professional learning should be intensive, ongoing, and connected to curriculum, or to practice. Focus on student learning. Some of these seem kind of obvious. Should align with school improvement priorities and goals, and build strong working relationships among teachers. I went back to the book to find that today, and then I had already had these slides in here, and you can see these slides look different. These are actually borrowed from a Future Ready presentation. So it's kind of the same stuff. I was noticing, oh, that's the study he was pulling in that presentation. But just the idea that that ongoing, embedded, in the day learning is so important. So we just need to find ways and provide opportunities to give that. And you see the little coaching mentoring down there. But this talks about the personal masteries versus the skills in the classrooms at those events. So when you're just talking research and theory, you get the low. But when you're talking demonstrations and practice and coaching, you get so much more that your staff take away. So our instructional coaches, probably like a lot of other districts, but we've spent the last year kind of redesigning their role. I meet with the instructional coaches once a week, typically. We have an hour meeting where we talk about how things are going in their schools. And just share, we've gotten into more this year, a little bit of sharing like problems of practice. So one person will come with something going on in their school that they want to share, and then we'll all try to provide feedback. I know that might be a little unusual, but that's given my background because I did the role before. It's kind of something that logically has come. And they also want that support. They're an isolated person in their building, the only one doing what they do. And so I think it's really important that they come together and they share those things. So this is a description they've come up with for what their role is about. And that came out of, it actually came out of Future Ready. If you go on Future Ready's website, they now have very specific roles broken out for librarians, instructional coaches, principals, school leaders. And so we looked at the Future Ready description of what they thought an instructional coach should be, and we took that and we used that to create their role. And at the start of this year, we broke that down into little bullet points last year, and at the start of this year, we actually rolled this out to all of the staff in each of the buildings. The principals gave each of the instructional coaches time to talk to their staff about their role. It's really always been their role to work on these instructional strategies, to work around personalized learning, but if you're a tech integrator, people come to you for all the techie stuff too, and they see you as the tech person. So we really just wanted to draw that comparison between, yeah, we're good at tech, but this is what we're really there for. We're here to promote personalized learning and to help you with your classroom practices. And it's really important. We hired a brand new person at our middle school. As someone retired this year, we made sure, and it was very important, that we hired someone who was a classroom teacher. And she actually came from that building, which was even kind of more powerful because she knows exactly what these teachers are going through on a daily basis. So that's been huge. It's really exciting. We have a new superintendent too, and he actually put that slide of their description up in his back to school thing, so emphasize that, and they were really excited. The weird thing has been for them is they were always called tech integrators. And it's just a word change, but we have to remind ourselves constantly, no, you're an instructional coach, and we're going to use those terms because it's important that you communicate that to staff while you're here, not technology. I think there's a change at the DOE in the state. Does anybody know the name that digital, I think digital is in the digital specialist. So at the state, they're actually revising that tech integrator piece to something else, but. And this is a book that I would highly recommend. I have my tech integrators reading this year. We're going chapter by chapter. If you haven't heard of Elena Aguilar, she does workshops all around the United States. We went to one of her workshops in Philadelphia in June. And we did modeling and role-playing and talking like with the difficult teacher or the teacher who's resistant to change. We had all kinds of scenarios. This was fabulous, this workshop, and now we're just kind of following it up with the book. But in this book, she talks about 3 types of coaching. She talks about direct coaching, which sometimes is necessary to be really directive with someone and help them. Facilitative, and transformational, and that's what we're working towards, and we're not there. We're totally not there, because a lot of the times the conversations still come back to technology when they're working with teachers. But that's part of the book, and then really working on this relationships with teachers, building trust, listening to what their problems are so that we can come up with solutions. I know I'm someone, when I sit down with someone and talk to a problem, I want to solve it, like that. I want to jump on it and go, oh, you should try this, or you should try that. And this was good for me too. This is great for principals, the art of coaching, if you're a principal or a leader in your district, because it really makes you kind of take a step back and focus on, listen through the problem, listen through it all, and then talk with the teacher. This is great too for, if you're evaluating teachers, just a really great methodology. So I love Legos. You ever been to the Lego walls in the stores where you can pick out all the Legos? So really what we're trying to do is offer lots of choices for teachers, lots of different paths to take so that learning is anytime, anywhere. Whether it's in the school day, whether it's at night, at home, whether it's on the weekends, whatever they choose and when they choose to get some of that learning done, we want them to have choices. One of the first things we did was we set up a digital cohort when we were first starting to talk through some of these new strategies. And the cohort was voluntary. We asked teachers to sign up. We did 2 cohorts our first year. And we started with common language. We focused on that SAMR model. We read Ditch the Textbook by Matt Miller, trying to focus on all the different resources and OER stuff we could bring in. But at the end of that, the goal was to have teachers develop units that utilized some of these, instructional strategies like flipped learning, blended learning, things like that, while also incorporating new digital resources. And this was just some of the stuff that sort of came out of that. Your toolbox is big. When you talk about personalized learning, lots of different ways to get at it, whether it's UDL, learner profiles, flipped learning, project-based learning, blended, all of these different pieces. What I think has probably taken off more than anything in our district is the voice and choice piece. So I would say when you go in and you're asking teachers about something they're working on with students and you talk to students, they have multiple ways to get at that material now, and that's been a really nice improvement to see. We still have some work to do on some others. But we have really nice pockets of all of this going on that is kind of spreading organically. This is our newest one. One of our coaches last year came up with, called it PD on the Go. And I know other districts have done stuff like this. We actually, I will say, Craig Scheel in Bedford School District, he has this really nice like Google Doc format that the teachers can work through. And we emailed Craig and we said, hey Craig, can we borrow your template? And we've got his name on, crediting him on all of those. But we put those all in Google Classroom. We have about 6 or 7 right now. Anything from digital portfolios to the SAMR model to project-based learning introduction. I put one in there that I did on data privacy, even though I know probably no one's going to want to do that one right now, but it's kind of boring. But we have all of these in these Google Docs. So teachers can go in and they can work through a Google Doc. We actually, one of our coaches is really big on making sure that we give credit for everything they do and we give credit in an easy way. So we sort of came up with this generic 3 hours if you do the introductory stuff and 5 hours if you create something associated. So you'll see like there's a step on what's the big idea. There's the model. There's Craig's little attribution right there. Step 2, develop some understanding. So usually there's a video or an article or something like that. Step 3 is typically some examples. And step 4 is a reflection. So that's actually something when the teachers open this from Google Classroom, it makes a copy for them, and then they can enter in their reflection and submit that so that we can see that that's completed to award those hours. And then at the end of every one, we're doing that optional creating piece. So if they want to spend a little bit more time creating something that they can actually use in their classroom. We have early release days that are in our contract. They're teacher-owned early release days, so teachers have to submit something that they're going to do with their PLC or someone else in the district to collaborate on. And this is being talked about now as something that they want to, bring into their PLC or their team or their group that day and work on together so that they have something created at the end. All right. And along that HyperDoc, how many people have heard of HyperDocs? There's a book out there about it. Yeah, it's really, it's almost like a self-paced sort of, students can work through, but they're meant to be very collaborative. So it's not just students sitting there at their computer in class working through this thing by themselves. They should be collaborative. So, that's actually not, that's one I did. It's not the one I thought. Oh, there it is. We sent one of these sort of, I would call it a hyperdoc kind of, home at the beginning of summer to just point out some various resources that teachers could use that we have in our district. Discovery, PBS Learning Media, there were podcasts, the Google Apps Training Center. And so we just pushed this out in June just as another resource for teachers if they were looking for places to go and things to do over the summer. And our teachers have, I don't know how PD works in every district, but they can collect their hours like traditionally, or they can do what we call like the body of work or evidence. Most of our teachers defer to hours because it's what they're used to and what they're comfortable with, but anything counts essentially. You can put in for it if you do it. Just like reading a book. We also do summer book clubs. We've been doing this now 3 years. And we put these in Google Classroom. We put questions associated with the chapters, and teachers talk through Google Classroom over the summer. They earn 15 hours for doing a book club in the summer. And so we buy the books in May, distribute them out. Usually we do 2 books. The first year we did, John Maxwell's, my superintendent, led that one on Laws of Leadership. We did Make Learning Personal. And we did for challenge kids who need better organization, like my own youngest child that I was talking about earlier. Smart but Scattered, which is a great book. The second year we did Teach Like a Pirate, and I can't remember what other book we did. And then this summer we did Lost at School and What Schools Should Be. So we still sort of had a tech take on things. I don't know if Ted Dintersmith, the author of What School Could Be, he's the one who did the documentary at High Tech High. I'm trying to think of the name of the documentary right now, but Most Likely to Succeed, thank you. If you haven't seen it, it's excellent. I think you can even get it a little bit easier and access to it now online. But that's essentially his trip around the United States showing the documentary, and these are his visits to different schools. Lost at School, again, our special ed director thought this was really important because, basically the premise of this book, Ross Green, who I think is from Maine, he came down and presented in New Hampshire at the end of the summer, and he talks about, every kid wants to succeed. There's things getting in the way. And so what are those problems that we can help kids solve? Because every kid at the root wants to be successful. So those are really good ones this summer. Typically we try to bring that whole group that reads a book together in the fall for coffee and cookies or something so that they get a face-to-face meeting. Pineapple charts. This is one of my favorites. So the Cult of Pedagogy podcast, and I can't think of her name right now, but she does this podcast. She talked about this in her podcast, and I was really intrigued. What happens is you put a calendar up in the staff room, potentially, and you allow teachers to write in something they're going to be doing that week or a week, 2 weeks from now, and share that and invite other people into their classroom. So we have now done this for a couple of years at our elementary school. We have a very organized assistant principal who kind of directs this. She has the instructional coach prepare and work with some teachers to come up with 2 to 3 things a week that are going on. The principal pushes it out in his email on Sunday night. If people want to go to that classroom and see what's going on, because it's either on blended learning or maybe they're doing the project-based learning unit or something, they contact the administration and the administration finds coverage. So again, that's a job-embedded professional learning that can be so impactful. And you can go in, the premise of this too is, you can go in for 5 minutes. If it's during your prep period or whatever, go in for 5-10 minutes. If you don't want to stay, you don't have to stay. It's supposed to be sort of like pineapple welcoming, come in my room if you feel like it. There's been other takes on this where people now, we don't do this, but they post QR codes outside their classroom to a little online form and say, hey, please come in and check out and see how I'm doing today with my classroom management or something. But the teacher picks a skill and they invite people in, and then you can just scan that QR code and give them a little bit of feedback. And that's, for us, we're not, like, that's a huge level of trust, I think, to get to that point. I'm not sure we're quite there yet. Our pineapple chart isn't taking off in the other schools as easily as it did in this one school, so culture's huge here, too. Anybody heard of that or seen anything like that? I'll just put a plug in for Future Ready. And how am I doing on time? Like, because I want to leave time for...
It's 3:40 now.
3:40, so we go to 4, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Future Ready, you can actually go to this link and you can take an assessment and it will design a playlist for you based on your assessment and your needs as a Future Ready leader. So I gave this to my principals and they used this in one of our administrative meetings to set up playlists that were personalized. We've also had workshops. Last year we had 2 days, it was due to snow or something going on, where we were able to basically get these bonus days at the end of the school year. And what we did was we had our staff, this wasn't this year, it was the year prior, but our staff came on board and they presented all the workshops. They helped design the day. We had the Most Likely to Succeed documentary going in our auditorium at different times. Our instructional assistants were all part of this day. It was for the entire staff. And we got some great feedback on how much choice there was and how much they appreciated that. I know Bedford does a similar thing. Maybe you'd share that after, Terry, about your Future Ready day too. But this was really positive. Teachers appreciate it when it's their own peers presenting. And then this comes into some of our final stuff that we're thinking about. So it's stuff I'm kind of passionate about, STEM, engineering design process, and just designing learning experiences. But we're hoping to promote teachers as the innovators of some of our personalized learning strategies and things going on in our district. We have something called Innovative Learning Proposals. It's just beginning. We have our first, what I call our beta tester this year, who submitted a proposal last year, got some funding for this project, and is now implementing this in her classroom. Her project centers around redesigning her instructional space, changing up some furniture, but at the same time, very focused on the teaching around personalizing learning for her students. So it's not, we've changed a lot of classrooms with furniture in our district, but not always with a focus of the teaching and the learning going on there. And so hers is really trying to incorporate that redesign of space with learning and really focus on those two pieces together. So when our teachers, when she did this, she went through this process and tested it all and did our Google Forms. We make them start with a how might we statement. So really positive place to start from, like how might we do this, not negative. And then we ask them to focus on personalized learning. And we ask them to try to be open to have a larger question, and then we'll work to focus that down with some mentors and people working with them for district. She is a big tweeter, so she's got, her name is Debbie Thomas, and her Twitter, what do you call that? Twitter handle, right? Her Twitter handle is @PMS_health if you want to follow her. She would probably totally appreciate some of your followers today. But she tweets constantly about what's going on in her health classroom at the middle school. Talks about the free-form station rotation for 8th graders as they learned about vaping one day, and using Flipgrid for the first time. So she puts it all out there for all of the other teachers in our district and other people who follow her to see. Those are some of the chairs that she got as part of this innovative learning proposal. So she's got these really cool flexible chairs, she's got new tables, she's got, she designed the whole space with certain learning areas. And then the final thing I wanted to mention was, I'm going to call this extreme PD, but I just want to mention it because I think not enough people take the opportunity to do, or you might not know about things. And I've got 2 opportunities I want to share, but there are probably more. So if other people know of other opportunities, I'm always looking for other ways to go somewhere and learn something somewhere else in the world. But one of them is Space Camp. So Honeywell sponsors educators to go to Space Camp for free. There's an application process. I think it usually comes out around this time of year. And usually I try to send that out to our teachers in districts so someone new applies every year. But they pay for your flight down to Alabama. They house you in the dorms, and you get a complete week of Space Camp. It's amazing. So I just want to recommend that because then you come back and you have all this great, resources for your kids and students. The other one that I would highly recommend that someone apply for and get in New Hampshire, because I don't think we've had a lot of New Hampshire people go, is the National Geographic Rover Teacher Fellow. And this one, it's an application, it's an essay, you write, answer some questions. They put you on a National Geographic boat to the Arctic, to the Antarctica, Galapagos, they go all Iceland. And I was fortunate that I got to go to the Arctic a couple of years ago to the Svalbard and see polar bears, not that close really, but, and I didn't see baby ones, I saw some pretty skinny ones actually, but just put that out there and when I see these opportunities, I send them out to my staff and I say, here's free PD, somewhere else where you can get out, you can meet other people or do really cool stuff. So I would love to see some other New Hampshire people apply for that and go. It's amazing. As far as what's next for us, we're going to be developing, I don't know, is it Title IV grants that New Hampshire, where are they Title IV, correct me if I'm wrong, that people, every district got some money. So what we're doing as part of our Title IV is our tech, I almost call them tech integrators, our instructional coaches will be doing after-school workshops, which we find to be the least effective, I have to say. But some people do prefer those face-to-face after-school workshops. Every after-school workshop they do, they're going to be developing a PD on the go module to accompany it so that anybody who couldn't go or wants to do it in a different format, they'll get paid for the time they invest in developing those PD on the go modules for us. So that's part of a Title IV grant in New Hampshire. We're going to keep on working on our innovation learning proposals and try to get a couple more. If you're wondering how I fund those, we apply for E-rate each year, and we've had 2 big networking projects over the past 2 years. So by the end of this year, I will have reimbursements from E-rate up to about 80 to 90,000. And we're not, like, our free and reduced lunch rate is not huge in comparison to some other districts in New Hampshire, but we get money back for those big projects, and I've got permission from my school board and from my administration to put that in a special money, like fund that kind of carries over year to year, and so we can fund some of these projects. And we're looking to do some leadership cohorts, so some focus on some small groups, because we seem to have a lot of initiatives, like a lot of districts, going on at once. We've got some people who are overwhelmed and say no more kind of thing. So my thought right now is that we've got to keep it moving, but maybe I build on these small groups in each school, these leadership groups, which kind of ties in again with Future Ready, because if you notice that outside of that framework is collaborative leadership. And when we talk about that collaborative leadership, we're really talking about our teachers and their feedback, their input, and their leadership in the schools to help lead these initiatives forward. So I'm really curious if anybody else has some really, whatever ideas they might be, simple, complex, whatever you're doing in your districts. And I would also entertain questions if you have any. So, but does anybody else have any other things? I would love to learn from other districts too.
Go to the Digital Promise website and click on Educator Micro-Credentials.
Okay.
So micro-credentials came out of hobbies and gaming, and so they have a lot of folks refer to them as digital badges. So they have kind of an unimportant reputation Digital Promise recognized that there are folks that are trying to use them as legitimate credentials, so they took the high road in how they design them. It's very clearly laid out what teachers have to do to earn them. They're developed by well-respected groups all over the country. And there are hundreds, literally hundreds of micro-credentials. So micro-credentials by themselves aren't PD, they're verification of what you can do. And they're proficiency-based, so you have to show not that you attended something, but that
You can do it.
do it. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a standard for the technology of a micro-credential, so they can be shared, regardless of where you earn them. There are some online professional development organizations that have what they call micro-credentials, but don't meet the standard, and often are just for attending the workshop, not for demonstrating the skill later. And if you want to know more about micro-credentials, I'm doing a session on Thursday.
On Thursday? What time do you know?
I don't remember for
Okay.
sure, but I think it may be the last, it's a proficiency-based professional learning with micro-credentials.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I will be here Thursday. This brings up an interesting point that we've talked about in our district. We also offer teachers to do the Google certification for PD. And there's been discussion on, well, you know, some people can go into that level 1 certification for Google, take the test and pass. They don't have to do all of the modules leading up to that. So what are we, you know, and that discussion has come up and we've said, well, then they should earn the credit for that. Absolutely. They don't need to do all the modules if they know how to do it. So, or you might need to do 2 out of 5 or something like that. So it's really getting at, you know, I was talking with someone earlier this morning about modeling. You know, we want to model what we're expecting of our kids. And so if our kids can reach a competency, ideally, right, they shouldn't have to necessarily do that work if they already know how to do it. So, yeah, thank you. Anything else? Anybody is doing the?
We had a mini conference at our district one year where we had a whole PD day dedicated to technology, and they could, a bunch of teachers created a bunch of different workshops they were offering, and others could sign up and choose which one they wanted to go through throughout the day, and they get to visit a bunch of different stations and have like a mini conference that they went to. So
Did you get feedback on that?
they loved it.
Yeah.
They want to do more of it. It's just there's so many different initiatives that we haven't been able to come back and revisit that in the past couple of years, but everybody keeps asking for it again. They're like,
But you can meet so many things too through that, right? You know, whether it's, we have SEL initiatives, we have, you know, and we were able to do a bunch
Because
of
all the
different
technology and all things that were going on in the district were tied directly to what they were doing in district, and they loved it. So all created by the peers, so they knew they could go back and reach out to that parent and say, how did you do that? I wanted some more information on it.
Yep, that's great. Anybody else? Okay. Any questions? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.